I have a question about compassion and the heart
Yeah.
opening. Yes. Um, Recently, I realized that how much of a conceptual attachment I have to the idea that I need to be compassionate, I need to be a certain way, I need to be kind, loving, make myself of service to others, this kind of thing. Um, and I guess it's interesting. There aren't a lot of things that I'm scared to let go of when it comes to this non-duality stuff and let go of your self-concept. But this one's a struggling point for me. It's like this is the fundamental orienting or guiding principle that enables me to be a good and decent person or this kind of thing. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, I'm scared to let it go.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
hear
was
that.
wondering if, from your experience, how that played out for you. I remember you said, you were really into service and compassion in the past, and I wondered how that played out in your journey
Yeah,
and
sure.
what advice you have for me generally.
Yeah. So, so just give me a moment, like I just let that sink in and see what comes. So the movement of the body in its natural flow will be for the betterment of society. So in its natural flow, so the character, not you, but the character, which is the habits and the conditions of the body mind, will move towards the betterment of the whole. It will also be self-preserving, but it's like we're like ants. We live in colonies, and we are also interested in the whole. So just there will be a natural movement for positivity of the whole. But then let's go back to the original question, because what I get the sense is that what you're saying is there is identification with compassion. It's not just that there is a natural movement, there is a discomfort that comes, there is a suffering or a tightness that comes with this compassion.
And
Otherwise,
it's
I
the
doubt.
me that has to be compassionate.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. So, what happens in the body mind and in the identification with the body mind? So, maybe it's better to say the identification. What happens in the identification is the belief, firstly, that there is somebody in the other body that you have to be compassionate to. So right now, there might be a belief that there is a Lisa inside this body that you have to be compassionate to. And we can have that in when there's identification, there can be that in every interaction, that there is a belief that there is a you there and a her there, Lisa there, that you have to be compassionate to. Naturally, your body will want to be compassionate. Most people will want to be compassionate, their bodies. So their natural flow will want to be compassionate. But what most people do is they identify with it, and then there is a personification of that. Like there is an imagination of me inside my body, and it's your story of me inside my body. It's not actually Lisa that you're seeing, it's always your version of the other person. And so your version will be the way in which you see good and bad, and you see compassion and not compassion, and what makes you fearful of other people's actions. So it'll be a combination of all of that. So your projection onto me will be your projections of what is good and bad, what is right and wrong, and what's compassionate or not, and what you're afraid of. So you're not actually, when you're identified, in that identification, it's actually about your aversions and your seeking. So it's about your suffering. So it's about you. So you're just seeing yourself in me, even though it doesn't feel like that, but you're seeing your own projection into me of what is compassionate to you or not compassionate. And then you're labeling that as the other person, that you've got to be good for that other person. Does that make sense, or is that a bit complex?
No, that makes sense.
So it is very addictive, that game, to the person, because what you'll be feeling in your identification, so when you're not you'll be projecting onto the other person, and what you're feeling is, if you don't do all these things, you are a bad person and unlovable. And that also isn't true, but that is what the seeking identification does. And then you go around running around the story and around the planet and around your interactions with other people, trying to be your version of good, because if you're not your version of good, then you are bad, and that is unbearable for people, to be the bad person. Whereas actually, it's like, as there's a disidentification with person, there's just a flow that comes through, and your body will naturally be good. Generally, there might be some things that the body has to work out, but generally it won't be wanting to do harm, because that it is a communal animal. So then it's this disidentification with that person. Who you are and your freedom is that which is looking, this alive presence which is all things, this moment, you could say, this no thingness appearing as everything. And that's the actual freedom. That's what you're looking for. So you're not looking to be compassionate or to be good for the other person. What you're actually looking for is always this moment. And that's the suffering of the person, is it believes, I will end my suffering if I am a good person, if I am compassionate to the other person. And your compassion for this other person is only an imagination of yourself. So you're not really living up to that and doing that. Like, it's not real compassion. It's like your own aversions and fears of other people, just projected into the other person. We're always playing with ourselves in the personal world.
So then, is there such a thing as real compassion? And what would that look like?
To me, real compassion is what you are, non-duality. That's the real compassion. It's like unconditioned love. And what that manifests like in the human world is unknown. And this is why we have so many problems with awakenings and teachers and what that actually looks like, because we don't know what it looks like, because our version of good and bad is only relative to the human world. So as you begin to surrender that identification with the person, then we don't really know what it will look like to be more in line with your humanness, like with your humanness beyond seeking, and what good and badness is. And this is a big problem for people waking up, and there normally has to be an experimentation, there's, because it is a really big thing, this idea of good and badness. Like, what to you is good now, like just off the top of your head? What is a good person?
Someone who makes some kind of effort to be sensitive to the needs of others, and to the extent that they can afford to spare the energy or attention or resources, they work to meet the needs of others.
Mm. Mm. And is that something that you would like from others to you?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Although I suppose part of my conception of it would be to be understanding if others don't give me that, and not be angry about it. But it really does feel like a bunch of pushing, seeking energy.
Yeah, it is. It's uncomfortable. It is contractive. Those kind of ideas. It's the most compassionate thing that you can do for somebody is this recognition of non-duality, and then allowing the person to be in flow. But that doesn't look like something, and this is why it's difficult, and this is why a lot of teachers get in trouble.
What do you mean in trouble?
Because they're not our idea of good.
Ah, yes, okay, yeah. Like what you said on a personality level is very basic, a very like nice example of compassion, or not of compassion. It's a very nice example of being a good person. Like who could argue with that? That's really a nice idea, what you say. Like all therapists would be like tick tick, and people that's like it's like really like the nice idea. But if it comes from contraction, it comes from contraction, and that comes from a seeking energy. And when you're coming from a seeking energy, you're taking rather than giving. It's normally about you feeling good, even though you're telling yourself it's about the other person. It's normally an element of you that is trying to feel good about something. Yeah, or avoid feeling like a bad person.
Yeah. And it's not that might not happen when you're in flow. It's just that when you're in flow, it's coming from a different energy. It's coming from an expansive, giving energy. But that's really subtle, and it's really scary to most people, because most people are very identified with the idea of good and bad. It's like what helped us survive is knowing what our enemy is.
Well, I felt glimpses of the expansive giving energy from beyond the person.
Yeah.
And it can just be another thing for the self to grab onto, and like, oh yeah, that's how I need to be all the time. Or,
yeah, and it's
like make that be my personality or something.
Yeah. But when that happens, you realize that it's really irrelevant being a good or bad person. It's just about being in that moment, and whatever comes. And it's not about you being a good person or you behaving in a certain way. It's about being really radically here, like totally empty and yet full simultaneously.
Well, thank you.
With pleasure, Tilly, to hear from you.
Likewise.
Yeah, nice. I'm sure I'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.